Now, I want to look at the case of Michelle Mone, who joined the Conservatives because Gordon Brown asked rich people to pay a bit more tax after the financial crash. Oh, it was a terrible time for rich people, having a top rate of tax of 50%. Now, she originally made her dosh by setting up a lingerie company until it went under in 2018. She also had sold supposed weight loss supplements, though they were criticised by the British Dietetic Association, sold luxury jewellery on a home shopping channel, sold a fake tan product, even positioned herself as a cryptocurrency guru. Anyway, she became a Conservative peer back in 2015. Now, as brilliant investigative work by Guardian journalist David Conn, who I can't recommend more, he really is a superb journalist, what documents seem to suggest is that Mone and her children secretly received 29 million quid from the profits originating from a PPE business awarded huge government contracts during the pandemic after she personally recommended them to ministers. Now, what's the company called? PP MedPro. Her support helped get it in the so-called VIP lane in the pandemic. What we're talking about here, VIP lane, you may have heard of it. So basically, these are companies with privileged access or contracts during the pandemic with alleged political connections to the Conservatives. Now, the contracts it secured, I shouldn't laugh at this, but it's just, what can you say? They secured were worth more than 200 million quid. Now, what happened to huge amounts of this money? It ended up in a secret offshore trust. This is what the documents, in any case, seem to suggest. Who were the beneficiaries, according to these documents? Oh, it was Mone and her adult kids. Now, she didn't declare PP MedPro in her House of Lords Register financial interest, so she's consistently denied links to PP MedPro, very important to say. And her lawyer said, for example, Baroness Mone did not declare any interest as she did not benefit financially and was not connected to PP MedPro in any capacity. So that's her official position, so we're clear. But you see, the leaked documents to The Guardian suggest that Mone's husband, the financier Douglas Barrowman, got at least 65 million quid in profits from PP MedPro and then distributed them through a series of offshore accounts, trusts and companies. Who, according to these leaked documents, where does it point to in terms of who the trusts were set up to benefit? Mone, then his fiancée, and her children. So 5 months after Mone helped PP MedPro secure the contracts to supply masks and sterile gowns for use in the NHS, this is when this happened. So why did Mone and Barrowman repeatedly say, because both of them repeatedly said they didn't have involvement in PP MedPro, they didn't have any role in the process to which they got government contracts. It's very important to have the official position of these people accurately cited. That is their position. Now, PP MedPro is also the subject of potential fraud investigation by the National Crime Agency, who've already searched several addresses, including the big old mansion of Mone and Barrowman in the Isle of Man. Now, we've got a character entering the stage left. May have heard of him. He's called Michael Gove. So, let's hear a little bit about his response to the allegations of his role with Sky News.
Well, during the pandemic, there were lots of people who were approaching us with offers of PPE. I referred all of them to the appropriate civil service channels in order to make sure that the PPE that we were being offered was of sufficient quality and could be sourced in time. It was a procurement process which every offer went through in order to assess.
But she did approach you with your personal email, no?
Well, lots of people approached me.
Personal email?
Yeah, there were lots of people who approached me, whether it was through email, text, or in the precincts of the House of Commons or wherever, to say that they could help us. Because, as you'll remember at the time, not just in the United Kingdom, but across Europe, we needed to source PPE quickly. And anyone who approached me, I said, thank you very much, and made sure that their efforts to help were referred to the appropriate, officially run, independent channel to assess whether or not the PPE that they were offering was value for money.
So what do you remember about the personal email that she sent you?
That she was one of a huge number of people who were approaching the government at the time, who were...
So you don't remember specifically her approaching you?
I remember lots of people approaching me.
Do you remember her specifically approaching you?
I do remember. The thing about Baroness Mone is that, as you know, she's a strong personality. But there were lots and lots of other people who approached me as well. Anyone who approached me, I thanked and then made sure that they went through the appropriate process so that anyone's claim was assessed not by me as an individual, but by an independent process.
OK, but what do you remember about her personal approach to you? What do you remember about that email?
That I remember that she was keen to ensure that PPE, which the government needed at that time, was provided.
Seems a bit on edge, doesn't he, Michael Gove? Well, interesting. According to David Conn's work, Gove said he'd referred all PP contracts to the appropriate civil service channels. Now, emails released to Conn under the Freedom of Information Act show that Gove was contacted by Mone, who then suggested that she contact another minister, the Tory peer Theodore Agnew. That's not a civil servant, that's a minister. Quite different. She then emailed both Gove and Agnew using their non-government email addresses about PPE that she said could be procured from her team in Hong Kong. So, really important point. Gove didn't, in this case, direct Mone to civil servants. In this case, to a fellow minister. That's what the emails show. Now, there's a broader question here, isn't there, about these PPE contracts. It was a national emergency. Things were pretty rubbish in this country. Now, these PPE contracts had vast amounts of public money sprayed on them. Guess how much overall, I'm not talking about Mone here, I'm talking about all PPE contracts. Guess how many billions were wasted on lost, defective, unsuitable, unusable, unpriced PPE? £1 billion? 2 billion? 5 billion? Oh, seems a lot. £10 billion. 10 billion quid. We're told there isn't enough money to pay nurses properly in this country, or to fund our public services properly, and they just piss away £10 billion. Now, what does this say about the country in which we live? I think what it does is it points to a pretty broken and tawdry social order, doesn't it? It seems to suggest that if you have money and connections, then you can get vast political access. And with that vast political access, it seems as though you are able to make an absolute fortune from public money. Now, these are allegations. It's very important to emphasise that. These are allegations which need to be investigated and answered by Mone. I mean, it's her somewhat bizarre response is to tweet an image which reads, "Don't believe everything you read or everything you think." Well, okay, fine. Let's hear what answers in full. Everyone is innocent until they are proven guilty. We can only look at what the evidence says and then discuss and debate them. But what this I do think underlines is, look, you get people who are obviously placed in the House of Lords and then become very well connected, or were very well connected. I mean, that's the other thing. The House of Lords is just stuffed full of cronies, people who donated vast amounts of money to political parties. Obviously, we can't prove they got their peerages. I'm not talking about Mone here, by the way. But we can't say that, in other cases, they got their peerages because they donated vast sums of money to various political parties, principally the Conservatives or indeed the Labour Party. But there's a lot of them do get peerages having donated lots of money. But they get privileged political access. And then it seems as though they, in cases such as these, they can get access to public money which gives them vast amounts of profit, which could then end up in offshore accounts. It needs to be proven, but that's what the evidence is pointing to. And I think there's a broader point about what I call socialism for the rich, which is rich people dependent on public money. You can see it in lots of ways, like the rail companies, for example. We spend more public subsidies on the privatised rail system than we did when they were under national ownership. And that helps line the pockets of these profiteers. You can see it with so-called PFI contracts, private finance initiative. You can see it with outsourcing generally. Get these companies like Circa and the rest that just get vast amounts of public money, often for doing, for being numerous accounts. I can't remember which security company was, supposed to provide security during the London Olympics in 2012. They couldn't do it. Who had to step in? The army instead, the state. And I just think all the time, if you look at what outsourcing and privatisation has done, it means often private companies and individuals who just get vast sums of money from the public sector. Socialism for the rich. Now, in the case of Michelle Mone, we need to establish what's happened. It looks very morally corrupt. In terms of legal corruption, that has to be established. Michael Gove has big questions to answer because as it looks, the evidence seems to contradict what he said. So, I think we're going to keep our eye on this. And I think we should give David Conn, as ever, a huge amount of thanks for his brilliant investigative journalism. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you next time.